All right, guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And my God, I am tired of the shippers. I'm tired of the shipping.
Oh, this one's going to be a rant, but it's most likely going to be Kneon, not me this time.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Final Fantasy VII Remake and how Screen Rant, for some reason, is writing articles on this damn game every day.
Because Screen Rant is trying to stay relevant, for one thing. And two, I'm sure there's somebody that knows somebody that's trying to promote it for them to help them out. Or there's some connection there somewhere. That they're like, use your platform to make it, help me get my way.
Yeah, day ago, 2 days ago. Yeah, there's something going on with, I think they're trying to get buzz for Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. Anyway, here's the thing. Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 needs to be more gay, according to Screen Rant, because it needs to be...
Why?
It needs to be current year.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Everything has to be gay because it's current year. But I thought you were just doing it because, diversity should be inclusive and because you want to tell good stories. But now it just sounds like what we've been saying, which is to hell with the stories. Let's just make it gay because it's current year and we should. You do still understand percentage-based wise that most people percentage-ly are not LGBTQ plus, right? You do get that, correct?
They don't. We're going to pull up some statistics here. We're talking about, and I want to reiterate, we're talking about a 23-year-old game getting an HD remake, and I'm going to tell you, I'm disappointed in the remake anyway, because they did take some liberties with it, but for the most part...
You were complaining.
Yeah, I played a little bit of it, and I'm like, it's not the same game. But for the most part, it's stuck with the story, more or less, and they're not going to make big changes. But the reason that they're even talking about it is because Final Fantasy VII has a lot of shippers. Like, a lot of shippers.
What doesn't have a lot of shippers?
Everybody's pairing everybody else up in Final Fantasy VII. They have been for quite some time. So that's what's going on here. Plus, it's Final Fantasy VII, bleeds over into the Kingdom Hearts fandom, and there's a lot of shipping there. So you've got this,
Extreme shippers ruin everything. I'm sorry, but they flat out do. Not all of them, the extremists.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. And thank you, Phasa, for pointing this out. Before we get into it, please subscribe. For more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys, this might be a little ranty. We are over 150,000 subs. And if you want to support us beyond that, check out our merch shop at shopclownfish.com. I'll put a link in the description in the comments. We've got our pins on pre-order here. These are limited edition pins. You can check it out. It's a 2-pack for $20. We've got some holiday stuff.
No, I have a shipping comment when you're done.
Okay. You've got a shipping
I'm confused. Okay. What happens if all these shippers are trying to ship everybody and everything? What happens when to the majority of people who don't get their ship? Like, you have these ships, but the ships are pushing for ships that are just a small minority of people, vocal minority, are yelling about. But then the other people might not not give a shit about a ship because why the games are for games, not for shipping. Or they might want the characters shipped in a way that isn't the representative way that the small minority want it to be shipped. What about those people? What about all the larger number of players who aren't in agreement with certain ships? What about them?
It doesn't matter. All that matters is Twitter. And I don't know if Square is going to listen or not. I hope
if they were smart, they wouldn't.
Square listened to Twitter before they've gotten burnt. And Square right now, they can't afford... Look, I'm going to be honest. Square can't afford to take chances after the disastrous performance of the Marvel Avengers game. Okay, and I think Final Fantasy VII Remake, if my memory serves me correctly, it came out strong out of the gate, but the sales have not been quite what they were hoping for because it only is part of a game. It's only like a quarter of the actual game.
But you said there was changes made too.
Yes.
People weren't happy about that.
Yes,
it's like what we saw with like Last of Us and other games. They might initially start strong because it's a sequel or something to a game that people loved, and then they got it and they're like, what the hell is this? And then the sales fall off a cliff. That's what we saw with Last Jedi too. Everybody wanted to see it because they liked Force Awakens and they were like, what the fuck? Sorry, Mom. And then it jumped off a cliff.
That's what happened here. People expected a kind of a 1-to-1 remake of Final Fantasy VII, or at least a complete game, and what they got was just the Midgar section of Final Fantasy VII with a lot of changes and a lot of stuffing, a lot of stuff to pad it out. But it's not enough. It's not gay enough. It needs to be...
Is that what this whole thing's about?
Yes, it needs to be gayer because Final Fantasy VII is a heavily shipped
But just because you ship it the way you want doesn't mean that's the way it's going to be. You cannot bully and harass every creator of everything to get the ship you want. You and your friends want a certain ship, and usually it's a ship that's made from a minority of people. You want this ship, and you're gonna scree and re and scree and everything else. I meant to say screech, but whatever. Until you get your own way, and that's great for you and your small group of people. But the majority of people either didn't want to ship at all, don't give a shit, or were like, "Why did you ship those characters when you were clearly setting up another relationship the entire fucking time?" God forgive me.
So so what I think they're getting at, judging by the picture, is Clack, which is Cloud and Zack. And Cloud sort of is the stand-in for Zack. It's complicated. I'll spare you the details, but basically people wanted these two characters to get together.
But they're a stand-in for each other. Yeah,
Cloud thinks he's basically got Zack's memories, and Zack died.
So isn't that basically, wouldn't that be like, masturbation at this point?
I guess. Well, I'm saying they call this ship Clack.
When I think about me, I touch myself.
I do. When I think about you.
No, I said when I think about me, because this is what
I'm
doing.
you. Oh. I'm touching myself, so I'm actually touching you. Anyway, I think they're going for Clack, which is one that a lot of people have shipped, but he's technically dead, and he was actually Aerith's boyfriend. He was in the PSP prequel game. And Cloud, kind of, his memories are all intermingled, thinking he's Zack.
So wait, they have a whole shippingfandom.com?
Yes.
And I'm looking at the things they're shipping, and most of these never happened ever, because some of them did, but most of them didn't. Anyway, continue.
Well, I was going to say, because you said Scree. So the ship name of a Scream and a Ree is a Scree.
Okay, good. We've invented a new term. It's a Scree, guys.
It's a Scree. So that's a little backstory here. That's where I think they're going. We're going to read this whole article because it's not very long. And it's basically just, I want my ship. And of course we put Zack on here.
That got put up on a screen as a news article. And the whole article is, I want my ship.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Here we go.
Keep reporting the news there, Screen Rant. Actual news.
Oh, good God. I need some alcohol for this, but I don't have any. Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 needs to make LGBTQ relationships canon. Needs to.
No, they don't. They don't have to do anything that you want. That's up to them.
Final Fantasy VII Remake needs to add LGBTQ relationships to the story to help represent modern audience and add better relatability and diversity.
I'll translate each sentence. Final Fantasy VII needs to put LGBTQ relationships in the story because I have to represent me and my friends.
Yeah, and I want my ship. I want my Zack and I want my Clack.
They don't have to change anything. It's a remake, but it's supposed to stick close to the game. If you want your own damn effing ship, make your own fan fiction. Make your own stuff. Go, instead of writing articles like this load of shit for Screen Rant, go make your own story and get it out there.
That's too hard. We'd rather just take somebody else's hard work and piss all over it.
Okay, I'll keep translating. You go ahead and read.
Okay, we'll go paragraph by paragraph.
Okay.
There are only like 3 paragraphs.
All right, and I'll translate.
Romance tends to be a part of many RPG games and has become more prominent in recent years. The Final Fantasy VII Remake is no exception. While the original Final Fantasy VII game had very little in the way of romantic subplots,
for good reasons,
Final Fantasy VII Remake integrated a much more involved love triangle between Cloud, Aerith, and Tifa. Well, that was alluded to strongly in the original, just the translation was bad. This unneeded addition, however, continues a trend of lacking romantic diversity in the Final Fantasy VII series as a whole, which has shown no inclusion of LGBT main characters.
Final Fantasy VII, the original, didn't have enough shipping in it, and I was a little mad about it. So when they had the remake, they had some more shipping in there, but they were straight shipping. And I didn't like straight shipping. I'm pissed because I think that they should have LGBTQ shipping because that's what I want and relates to myself. For quote-unquote modern audiences, it just means me.
Main characters. So when we're showing Zack, I'm telling you, this is what it's about.
Oh, I know you're right. I know you're right.
Clack. It's about
but
Clack.
basically, I want ships that are going to be inserted that have no reason to be there, never were there, and had no part of the story whatsoever, because it'll make me happy. Because you need to put diversity in everything, because everybody has mandates. Because we screamed about it to make sure that Hollywood understood that everything had to have diversity in it, even when it makes no sense, and even when statistically speaking, it's not representing people as a whole. We got to put it in there because we said so.
Here we go. We're already getting to the ships. The original Final Fantasy VII left much to the imagination as far as character relationships go.
For good reasons.
Yeah, interactions between characters weren't expressed as explicitly romantic, and this ambiguity allowed fans of Final Fantasy VII to either ship more mainstream couples like Cloud and Tifa, or they could look into relationships that were more relatable to their own personal lives, like Vincent and Sid.
For fuck's sake. Sorry, Mom.
By erasing this in Final Fantasy VII Remake and pushing the love triangle, the game has disposed of the more delicate approach to letting the player connect the dots in their own way, no longer allowing them to decide for themselves which characters might have a personal interest in each other.
Translation. The original game, I have to be able to see it. The translation is the original game left it open to your imagination that you could do as you would because the main focus is actually the damn game. You know, like most people want it to be.
Kill monsters.
But that isn't okay because, you know, but that was okay back then because you were allowed to like put people together like Vincent and Sid if you wanted to. Because if you were a person that related to your life, no one else, everybody else doesn't relate to your life. It's only us diverse people that need that relationship. Only us. But when they had the new remake, they started pushing a love triangle. And by doing so, that took away the idea of you could ship whoever you wanted. But the title of your effing article is, they need to make more ships in there that you want that are more representative of you. But then you go from that saying that you're demanding it to now, they didn't put them in there and make it ambiguous so you can make it yourself. Well, make up your damn mind. Do you want it to be ambiguous so you can make it yourself? Or do you want them to flat out canonize, a couple that you like? You can't have both ways. You literally contradict yourself in this paragraph.
You know how Lucasfilm dealt with the Raylos is they had them get together for a minute and then they killed off Ben Solo. So you had your cake and you lost it too.
Well, I just say get rid of Twitter and that'll solve a lot of problems.
Oh, for God's sake. Here we go. The Final Fantasy VII Remake is going to take away a player's ability to draw their own conclusions about romantic interactions. It would only seem right to finally add LGBTQ+ representation into the game. A large number of fans...
Hypocrite, sorry.
A large number of fans for the game identify as members of the LGBTQ+ community, and by forcing engagement in heteronormative relationships, these players are isolated and prevented from being able to find relatable romantic content. Why do you need that in a fucking RPG, a JRPG? Go kill monsters. That's what you're supposed to do.
Go write your own fanfic about the damn game.
Kill monsters.
No, they're mad because they said, well, they're actually adding relationships in this one, but they're not the relationships we want.
Yeah, but those games are different. The Final Fantasy games have a pretty linear storyline. You're basically playing an anime or a manga, That's what you're doing when fighting monsters in between. That's kind of what the games have become. It's not a sandbox game. It's not an open world game. This is a remake of a 23-year-old Japanese RPG. Okay, very popular, very well-known characters, very well-known relationships for the most part. They did what they could do back then, but it's not enough.
But because there are a lot of LGBTQA+ people who like the game, there's a lot of people who aren't LGBTQA+ who like the game as well. You're supposed to change everything about it and put the representation in they want. So it's either leave it ambiguous so we can do our own ships, or make sure you give us our ships, or you're being an ist and a phobe.
So, oh God, here we go. Look, they were having problems with Tifa, even going way back because she got the bouncy boobs, right? So here we go. Final Fantasy VII Remake would benefit by allowing this example. Instead of pushing outdated love triangles, where the female characters feel like nothing more than trophies for the players to win.
I never got that vibe.
No.
I used to watch you play these games all the time. I never got the vibe the females were just trophies.
Most Final Fantasy games, especially the newer ones, have pretty strong female characters.
Has this person actually played these games other than just bitching about it because they want hits on an article and they want to push their own ships and diversity and agendas they want?
Wait until you read the comments.
Okay.
That comes up multiple times.
Okay.
Like, have you actually played the fucking game? No, because a lot of people who ship characters, believe it or not, they don't even watch the fucking shows. They don't play the games. They're just like, oh my God, it's such cute art. These characters.
No, oh my God.
Need to get
I got to find who can I ship together so it's not, heteronormative. Even though I want to point out yet again that I am for diversity and inclusion when it makes sense and when it's organic, not shoving it into a remake for no reason other than to hit checkboxes, especially when the flat out percentage of people that are these minority groups they're going about are much smaller than the rest of the population as a whole. That's not saying they should not be represented.
Right.
I'm not saying that at all. There are plenty of things out there that do represent them. And there are plenty of new things out there that have this in it. But you don't have to go back and remake a whole old game to remake it just to fit your small percentage in and change the entire game to accommodate a tiny group of people who are bitching about it on Twitter. And of that percentage, most of them don't even care. It's a smaller group of the smaller group on Twitter having a shit fit.
So we're talking about, so if LGBTQ is 5% or less of the population, of the people who actually have a shit fit about this stuff on Twitter, you're probably talking about a tenth of a percent that actually give a shit about this. And
it's not fair to all other people who don't care, who aren't out there demanding this stuff, that get wrapped up in it.
There are LGBTQ people that grew up playing this game. It is a classic. It's a beloved classic, who are totally fine with everybody being the way that they are because that's the game they play.
This whole idea that you are so fucking shallow that you cannot relate to any character unless it reflects you in every way, shape, or form is not only immature, it's just plain sad. I can watch characters that happen to not be straight, and I find things I relate to and like about them. All the time. There are characters I love that aren't straight, and that's fine. Just like, and I can still find ways to relate to them that don't involve me, that happen to not be, me having to be straight or not be straight to do so. If you cannot relate to characters unless they are exactly like you, then you need to seek help, because that's just sad.
Yeah. Apparently these news outlets don't vet a lot of this stuff.
Clearly.
They just look for buzzwords.
And I wonder why they're losing credibility.
Yeah. Because again, you have people who are less than 1% of the population, being people that are obsessed with relationships like this on Twitter, getting huge megaphones on these sites, and they're running them into the ground. We saw it with Comic Book Resources. At one point in time, Comic Book Resources was a reputable comic book fan site, and now it's just a platform for Twitter idiots to spout off stuff that nobody's reading, and it's all about just slamming out as much content as you possibly can with the right buzzwords to get traffic, to get ad revenue.
Right.
That's what this is all about.
And then and it's also insulting to the people who are in the minority that they're claiming to speak for, when most of them don't even agree with them. And then they're like, they're going to be all pigeonholed into there too, which is a load of shit.
So
you're talking about like a tiny percentage, less than a percent, dictating everything for everyone else.
And this is why the sales are falling off on stuff. This is why, because again, that's not to say you can't, but to have expectations of a 23-year-old game being brought up to 2020 standards.
And standards by who?
By who?
By these people who are screeing and trying to make everything be changed to represent them, even if it doesn't, even if the stuff fails, because it's not representative and generalized enough. Then you know what? Who cares? Let them scream.
Yeah, let them scream. Because look what happens when you pander. They pushed Ms. Marvel in Marvel's Avengers. Mm-hmm. She was annoying AF, and
the game had problems too.
The game had a lot of problems. It's not all Ms. Marvel, but she became the poster child for it. Now she's the poster child for failure, because Twitter loved that Ms. Marvel was front and center.
We saw those artists that those people had pitched shows, and their shows weren't being picked up because they were truly diverse. They themselves were diverse. Their characters were diverse, but because they had such backlash over things like High Guardian Spice, which is a reason the show might have been good. The backlash was because 1, the money wasn't going to where it was supposed to go, where people were told it was going to, and that was a big one. 2, it was like a ripoff of Little Witch Academia, and 3, their preview for it was basically a commercial for diversity. There was nothing in it about the show whatsoever other than, look how diverse we are, when it was literally clones of the same type of people. Yeah. Diversity according to 5 years ago, which basically meant lesbians.
Pretty much. So here we go. It's past time for Final Fantasy games to join in a more inclusive era.
They've been.
While the developers did a good job with bringing the Honeybee Inn scenes up to date, the fact of the Honeybee Inn, for those of you who have never played the game, is where they dress Cloud up as a woman.
So they're happy about that.
They're happy about that.
Yes. But when J.K. Rowling does it, she's a horrible person and he's canceled.
Well, Cloud didn't kill anybody. He was doing it to rescue his friends. No,
but doesn't matter. He still was not trans. He was baiting because he wasn't actually trans, dressing up like a woman, and that's a problem.
There are people on Twitter calling for Cloud to canonically be trans. They're saying he's basically trans, but does
because of one scene in the game.
From a 23-year-old game.
It
was done as a joke originally, like, cartoonish, like, oh, let's dress him up like a girl so he can go into the brothel and save his friend.
I really wish they'd make up their damn mind what's okay and what's not, because one thing's done for one thing that they like, and everything has to be changed to be according to that. Somebody else that don't like does it, and then they should be canceled because how very dare they?
Yeah. Yeah, so anyway, the fact of the matter is the story of Final Fantasy VII still lacks inclusive characters who represent the wider audience that enjoy the Final Fantasy series.
The wider audience! The wider audience!
This lack of diversity hurts Final Fantasy VII Remake, taking large steps backwards from the original that left doors open for players to make their own choices and ship their own people.
But wait,
and draw their own conclusions.
Again, they're talking, keep mentioning that, where they left it ambiguous so you could draw your own conclusions. And they keep saying that, but then followed with, but they have to make these ships, canonically ships, because you shouldn't be able to make your own conclusions, but they should be allowed. They keep talking out of both sides of their mouth.
Basically, it's okay if we have LGBTQ ships in the game, but, again, taking away this autonomy for an outdated romantic agenda.
They keep doing this, outdated romantic agenda.
Straight is outdated.
Apparently. Except that most people in the world are straight. I'm sorry if you don't like to hear that. It's nothing against people that are LGBTQ, whatever. It's nothing against them at all. I have lots of friends that are. I have no problem with people being LGBTQ plus. No problem whatsoever. I'm just really tired of these vocal minority bullshit articles like this saying that basically everything should be changed ever because of what? Because for a small group of people? Now you keep getting all these changes in other games that are new things, which is fine because it makes sense, okay? That's completely fine. But what you want to go back and take a game, a beloved game, and make all these changes to it because it doesn't reflect what you want, because your romantic agenda is current and now because you said so.
Because you want clack, and
I'm sorry,
you're not
you
getting
are full
clack.
of shit. Flat out full of shit, because if this was a new game, okay, fine, and they wrote it this way and it's out there that way, that's different. That is completely acceptable and understandable. This is a remade game from years ago. You don't need to shove this shit in there to make people like you happy, and it's not the larger audience. Stop saying that. That's a lie.
So this would be like if the Star Wars special editions, if they demanded, and they would, current year, demanded gay sex scenes between Han and Luke to be current year.
Right.
And they went back and added, it's like, no, yeah. So we were going to give a new meaning to Han shot first, by the way. Yeah. But that's basically what's going on here. It's like you're taking a 23-year-old game and demanding that it have current year politics.
No, it's not even that. Demanding it represents you and your ships. You are sitting there screaming about a small group of people on Twitter, less than 1% of people who want this ship their way, and you're one of them. So you're using a news outlet, quote unquote, to use it as a pedestal for your platform of why this game should be completely changed. Everything about it should be changed just to accommodate you.
Well, they say as much. It's frustrating for those of us who can no longer feel connected to the story's characters.
Wait, because they took they made a love triangle with 3 characters.
Which was implied heavily in the original,
yes,
by the way.
that you can no longer feel connected to characters. Let me get this straight. You can no longer feel connected to characters unless they sleep with the people like you sleep with. Basically, unless they fuck the people you think they should fuck. Sorry, Mom, but I'm so mad. Yeah, unless they do that, you cannot relate to these characters at all. Which, again, people are much more than who they sleep with. You do understand that, right?
No, it's all about genitals.
I'm like, there are people out there that you might never know who they sleep with, but you find reasons to like their character. It's never been told who they, what they identify as sexually, and and you can still find reasons that connect them. But because they don't sleep with your ships, then you can no longer connect to them because because being straight is outdated. Even though that most people in the world, statistically speaking, are straight.
Statistically speaking, that's how we make more people.
Again. Seek help. Because if you can't relate to characters unless they F who you think they should F, then maybe you need you need to see somebody.
By adding LGBTQA plus characters and representation to Final Fantasy VII, the game would be up to date with diversity that's being seen in other games.
This up to date with diversity is because you guys all screamed and tried to make Hollywood insert diversity into everything. It's ridiculous. And when you diversity, you don't mean diversity. You just mean LGBTQ. Because real diversity would mean that maybe you should make some more characters ethnically diverse. Or maybe they should make some other female characters in there. Or maybe there should be other diversity check marks. You don't care about those. You don't care about diversity. If you cared about diversity, you'd be saying, why aren't there more ethnically diverse characters in this? You only care about people who look like that you want them to be with because they F who you want them to F.
Well, technically, yeah, because you know what? Final Fantasy VII, if you're going to make a complaint, there's only one black guy.
That's what I'm saying. You
And
think
he's a stereotype according to these people.
If you were truly about diversity, you would be going on about the fact that there aren't enough representation of other different kinds of cultures and different kinds of people in the game. No, you don't care about that. Your version of diversity is my two gay guys aren't effing each other in the game. That's what you're mad about. That's not even diverse. It's just about because two guys you want to see, or people that you want to see like you aren't getting it on. That's what you're pissed about. And then you keep changing your story. It goes from it needs to be included to, well, it should be ambiguous again. Well, you can't have it both ways. Basically, you're saying it needs to be included because I'm pissed because I didn't get my own way. And diversity. And it's not even about diversity. It's not even about true diversity. It's about you wanting people to look like you and act like you.
And again, the case can be made that Barrett was the first and only, I believe, black character in the Final Fantasy VII series, or in Final Fantasy VII until I think 13 was the next time they introduced a black character. Well, you could consider Fran, I guess, in 12, but she was a bunny.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I just keep reading this. You should cement other romantic storylines that include their wider audience. Bullshit! The widest part of their audience is not you. No matter how you want to scream about it, no matter how you want to call people istanphobes, statistically, mathematically, factually, it's not you. Now, do I think that means we shouldn't include this stuff? Hell no. I think this stuff should be included in these games moving forward, not with remakes.
Well, that's the problem I have with it. Like, people find things problematic from 20, 30, 40 years ago. It's like, well, that is the time the product was created in. And they are taking a lot of liberties with Final Fantasy VII Remake as it is right now, which is actually alienating a lot of old school fans. I have no intention of picking up part 2.
But you don't count because you are outdated, and the majority of people in the world, 95% of people in the world are now gay. LGBTQ because they said so. It doesn't make it. Now, if it was the other way around, they'd be having a fit about that too. This is ridiculous.
So here we go. These are the comments.
Their argument is stupid.
While the idea is fine, remember this is a remake.
Exactly.
If there aren't any LGBTQ plus relationships in the original, there won't be in the remake.
Exactly.
Exactly. There weren't before, and there shouldn't be in the remake unless they introduce a new character. Don't give them ideas. My God, what a stupid article.
Agreed, Andre.
Waste of time to read this stupid article.
Agreed.
Did the author even play the original? If they did, they would realize this is a stupid request. If they want representation, I would say to urge Square Enix to do it in a new Final Fantasy.
Exactly, Katie.
Not a remake of an old Final Fantasy game.
This is why these reboots of shows keep failing, because they're trying to take something that has an established fan base and shove, and like She-Ra. It wasn't like they just did a little bit, put some inclusion in there as far as this person quantifies inclusion, not by inclusion by anybody else's standards. They shoved it into literally almost 2/3 of the show, and then they're like, well, you're just a hater if you don't like it. If you made a brand new damn show about Sword Woman and everything else, you could have shoved whatever agenda you want in there. But you called it She-Ra. So by calling it She-Ra, it was wrong for you to do so. That's what people said. They didn't care if there's a new show called Sword Woman and there was a bunch of characters that were like that, they wouldn't have cared at all. It was because you took She-Ra. People wouldn't care if they made a new game and put a bunch of representation in it. It's because you were calling it Final Fantasy VII Remake that they care.
Yeah.
This isn't rocket science.
No, and the thing with She-Ra is it was kind of insidious because they took the She-Ra name because they knew it had a platform, it had an audience, and they designed the show to be ship bait. That whole show was designed to be ship bait.
Right. And you want toxicity out of all this shit, Hollywood? Stop listening to these people and just make good things that might happen to have diversity in them that are new. Continue. Sorry.
These comments are gold. This right here is why people hate all the my representation trend. You hacks are just doing as you always do and advocate smashing in your checks for the sake of checks. Just enjoy the damn story for being a good story. If someone needs some character to be exactly like them, I truly pity them.
Exactly.
Since that must be a miserable, entirely self-centered existence.
Exactly.
Please no LGBTQ, let it be like the original. But why? Can we cancel the author of the article? Laura, this job just isn't for you. Hell no, big no, stupid article. Get the effing political correct away from my game. They need to look at replacing this person. You had one job. WTF, no LGBT characters in Final Fantasy. Did you play Final Fantasy 13 by any chance? Do you know Vanille and Fang by any chance? Also, well, again, that's a newer Final Fantasy game. Also, this article is terrible. There's no need to force inclusion in a history that doesn't need it or has had before. Stupid article in Spanish, I think, and no. Not a single person.
Agreed.
Not a single person agrees with this. Again, 23-year-old game. It is what it is, you know? And I'm already, like I said, I am a fan of, a huge fan. You know I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan. Now, 7's not my favorite, but, you know, I was looking forward to this remake.
Very much.
And because of all the changes they've already made to it, I'm not interested in picking up the second game.
And if you can't play this game because it doesn't represent you, then don't play this game. Go find another game that represents you. I mean, I'm sure you can pick up Last of Us really cheap right now.
Yeah, right. They're like,
or the second one. I'm not the first one, obviously. Last of Us 2. I'm sure you can pick it up really cheap right now.
Yeah, this is just bullshit. I mean, what is it? What is going on here? This is like,
they're trying to use these platforms to push more into what they want. It's not enough for Hollywood to say that they're going to be inclusive of people that are like, you know, different races and everything else. You have to, diversity only means people who sleep with people like I do.
But the thing that gets me about this, the thing that gets me about all of this is like, why is the clock being rolled back? Because this article could have been written in 2015. Like, this is a 2015 article.
Because this game's coming out and they need, and it's a buzz, it's something that people are talking about and they need hits.
I think they get off on making fans angry so that they go to the article to be like, oh, I'm so angry.
But they're not going to your article. They're going to listen to us instead, calling your shit out. Or they're going to go to an archived version of your article. They are deliberately, do you not understand this? Because you guys keep pushing these stories that are not news and they're just absolute garbage and it's full of shit and errors. People are going to the archived versions of these articles to make sure you don't get any money or hits. You do know that, right?
There are people making more money off of your articles, mocking your articles, Screen Rant, than you are seeing from the actual articles. I would suggest to any of these blogs that you do a self-check, okay, and you get your head straight and you start sticking to news and you start representing the fans and speaking for fans and not allowing people to put this Tumblr bullshit on your platform. Because it makes your platform a laughing stock.
And not just that, because you keep pushing these ridiculous things like this, all it's doing is making people, you know, because it's a tiny percentage of a small percentage. So basically everybody who's in LGBTQ+, they're getting lumped in with you because of your screaming about shippers. And that's not fair to them. Just stop. You're using them as a shield to say you're just homophobic. You're transphobe. You're against LGBTQ+ people. No, I'm not. I'm against your bullshit. There's a difference.
I love this though, Clack, because Zack, his role in this game is going to be expanded upon apparently. But I love this status of this relationship. They were just friends, and Zack is dead.
Right.
But he might not be in this version, so I don't know. Anyway, we're gonna wrap this up.
Yep.
Another day,
I promised it was gonna be you ranting, but it would turn out to be me anyway.
That's okay. Another idiotic article from these news outlets that are desperately clinging to relevance, trying to bring in ad revenue so they don't get absorbed or sold off. And I think Screen Rant is living on borrowed time too.
And again, I want to say sorry, Mom, because I used the F word an awful lot in this video, but I was so effing tired of the bullcrap, I had to do so. So again, I apologize to my mother.
All right, so we're going to wrap it up. Please subscribe to Clownfish TV for more pop culture news, views, and rants. And we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.